Pharloom is a kingdom haunted by Silk and Song. It is a world in total collapse, victim to the higher beings that pull the strings from above. But it's not a dead world, because its inhabitants somehow live on. Scattered surviving towns, a resilient culture, and workers still tending to the land all prove it. Despite its doomed condition, Pharloom is still a place where people cling to life. So what I want to do in this video is explore the cursed ecosystems of Silksong to analyze its world design and world building, to uncover the ways ecology, ritual, and creatures are woven together to make Pharloom feel like a living, haunted system. Now let's journey through this kingdom in a state of beautiful decay. Instead of a triumphant entrance, we're carried into Pharloom in a cage by a group of envoys, but the bridge collapses and Hornet, the protagonist, tumbles into a kingdom that doesn't welcome her as much as it catches her. The only mercy offered is the earth itself, green, soft, and strangely alive, breaking the descent before the real dangers begin. The Moss Grotto is a gentle yet deliberate introduction to this kingdom in chaos. The Grotto's central theme is one of rebirth and awakening. Hornet is freed from a cage and begins her long pilgrimage to the top of the world. The area's focus is on teaching her how to use her unique abilities like her jump and downward attack. An acrobatic and needle-based combat that is much faster than most inhabitants of the Hollow Knight universe. Speaking of which, the atmosphere is a clear blend of the familiar, recalling the aesthetics of Green Path from the original game, but with a distinct new identity. Because the grotto might be dense with plant life and glowing fungi, the real question is how the creatures that inhabit it manage to survive within this overgrowth. Deeper in the caves, we can see a popular snack among the population that dangles from the cavern ceilings. The mossberry seems to be a favored delicacy among the inhabitants of Pharloom. Its seeds might be toxic to most creatures, but I watched a young acnid dart through the air while clutching a berry in its mandibles, as if they were delighted to taste something better than the endless moss and lichen that cover the walls here. But the berry seemed to draw more than just insects. Other strange life forms seem to be interested in these mossberries. The moss druid can be found hunched over a cauldron, tirelessly stirring a strange concoction. My curiosity got the better of me, but I think it's time to leave. The dense foliage parts to reveal more movement, creatures woven seamlessly into this underground wilderness. And by their looks, it's as if the cave itself had grown them alongside its roots and moss. The moss grub creeps slowly across the cavern floor with its body cloaked in green fur and a series of sharp spikes along its back. It can also be found grazing along the moss-covered ground, feeding on the greenery that defines this place. But whether their covering is actually moss gathered for camouflage or an evolutionary adaptation that mimics it is difficult to tell. As a result, I couldn't help but wonder how large these furry creatures might be able to grow, but it looked like I found the answer before I was able to prepare myself as another creature that calls this region home emerges. A fully grown moss grub with a hardened hide and sharpened stinger. The moss mother is the grotto's protector. She hangs from the ceiling with her body nestled within strange plant-like pods that resemble cocoons, but the creature is no match for Hornet's quick acrobatic movements, and once he falls, the path ahead opens and the world of Pharloom begins to unfold. Just as I was about to leave the Moss Grotto, a soft whisper pulled me deeper into one of its caves. At the center of the room stood a monument with strands of silk trailing from the ceiling and fastening themselves to creatures gathered below. These inhabitants, taken by Pharloom's haunting, are now capable of little more than prayer and aggression. From the gentle embrace of the Moss Grotto, the pilgrimage takes a sharp turn into the desolate. After passing through a somber little settlement, where I've grown especially attached to this friendly bug referred to as Little Pilgrim, we find ourselves in the Marrow, a hostile region that immediately sheds the lush comfort of the vibrant caves. Here, life is not green and abundant, but hard and mineral. The walls are ripped like bones, the ground is a mix of dust and calcium calcified remains, and the air hangs heavy with the scent of decay. Where the Moss Grotto felt like a natural, welcoming cave, this place feels like a petrified carcass of some colossal beast. The journey through this new biome is a difficult exploration full of jagged platforms and treacherous spikes, forcing Hornet to make full use of her acrobatic skills. The critters that call this area home are no longer the simple, moss-cloaked creatures of the grotto, but hardened terrors adapted to this harsh environment. We first encounter the Skull Scuttler, a small bug that cleverly uses the discarded skulls of the Marrow for both protection and disguise. The Skull Brute, another soft bug sheltered beneath a massive horned skull, charges at intruders with a reckless abandon to showcase the primal nature of this region's inhabitants. In a way, the creatures of this region are all scavengers, simply trying to adapt to the remains of a world in decay. But there is one who rules them all, the Skull Tyrant. A rare and enormous Skull Scuttler is the Marrow's largest predator, and the most feared for its ferocious temperament. The creature carries an enormous skull on its back, stolen from something far larger than itself. A scary thought that somewhere in the deeper reaches of this kingdom, such beasts must still exist. But tragically, the creature does not remain bound to its niche. It sometimes wanders outward to disturb the fragile balance of the nearby settlement, and leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. Be at peace, little pilgrim. A corrupted kingdom inevitably casts a long, dark shadow over everyone. Our only hope is to press on with our pilgrimage. Leaving the Marrow behind, the path descends into the lower levels of Pharloom, where the silence of bone and dust gives way to the roar of falling lava. The stale air of decay is replaced by the metallic scent of a subterranean port, a place once alive with industry, now eerily abandoned. Entering the deep docks reveals an industrial forge that once might have thrived on the hard labor and ingenuity of Pharloom's inhabitants. True to its name, it provides platforms and docks for lakes of bubbling lava, an infernal sea that casts a reddish glow on the metal carapaces scattered around the area. These shells, which seem to have been used as a container for hot coals, hint at the intense jobs the workers had here. One of these workers, lost to the haunting, now mindlessly patrols the sky. Flintstone flyers bear pouches full of flintstone, a natural wonder with many potential applications, but instead of using it for industry, they fling it at any intruder. Their aggression and the valuable material they waste is another tragic consequence of the haunting stripping away a soul's purpose. And the main inhabitants look similar to the Flintstone flyer, workers with bells on their head and a now unclear purpose. And it's among these haunted workers where Hornet finds the Forge Daughter, a hulking being with a small sleigh bell for her head and a large church bell making up her body. She appears to be the keeper of this place, offering her craft in a place otherwise marked by silence and solitude. Yet a trace of camaraderie seems to remain. I could hear the Forge Daughter occasionally laughing at the small jokes of her apprentice. I was surprised at how deep these tunnels actually went, and it made me wonder who could be responsible for the endless excavation of these caves. Deep within the lower levels of the docks, a cascade of molten rock falls like a burning waterfall from the lake above, leaving little shelter from the heat. It's here, in this hostile landscape, that life still manages to take root. Among the rocks crawls the lava lug, a sticky mollusk that defends itself by spraying burning fluid from growths on its back. What at first seems like it's purely a defense mechanism may also be necessary to rid this creature of excess heat, while I need to move quickly to avoid being burned alive. The wildlife has found fascinating ways to adapt to the searing environment of the docks. One thing that struck me as strange was that even this far below, plant life somehow clings on. Between the cracks of molten rock, roots creep upward, and in one chamber I found the body of a fallen worker with greenery pushing out from beneath his helmet. Further in, the plants had taken over entirely, with strange, half-living growths moving through the area as if the vegetation itself had learned to walk. These oddities are known as the furtid, skittish scramblers with no defense but its antennae, which resembles the grass it hides in. The flapping furtit takes this mimicry a step further, looking convincingly plant-like when roosting, but having its ruse ruined in flight by its bulbous body. It was this sudden burst of greenery that made it clear I had stepped into the far fields and left the deep docks behind, an area home to biological formations with plains that both welcome relief, but also hide threats within their tall grass. This biome is home to a dangerous and highly organized presence known as the Scar clan. The first signs of this life form are the colonies of red ants, tirelessly threading their way across the ground, even picking up broken daggers and broken sticks. The smallest of them, Scarlets, are tiny burrowing ants that serve a higher purpose, acting as finders and foragers for their tribe's warriors. The clan's social hierarchy extends to the skies, where Scar wings are summoned to aid their larger companions in a hunt. The most common of the clan's warriors are the Scar Scouts, young ant hunters who, despite their youth, are impressive opponents. They are trained for combat from birth and will often call for aid if danger comes close. The most formidable of these foes are the Scar Stalkers, skilled hunters who bear blades and armor fashioned from bone. Beyond the dangers of the Scar clan, the lower levels of the far fields are a perilous thermal environment, where air currents rise up from a sea of lava that is undoubtedly connected to the deep docks. It is in the middle of this expanse that the seamstress has made her home with a series of woven silk hot air balloons swaying gently in the heat. With a little modification, she tailors Hornet's cloak to enable it to harness the air currents that fill the caverns and gracefully float through the air. I eventually found a little town called Pilgrim's Rest, a place that serves as a rest stop for those who have journeyed this far. To enter the store though, I had to pay 30 rosaries, so it seems the shopkeeper is more interested in ripping off pilgrims, even saying that sharing your devotion with him is sure to bring you good luck on your journey ahead. When I left the store, the door closed and I had to pay 30 rosaries again to enter. The shopkeeper makes me think that this place might need to be flattened by some big beast. West of the far fields, the pilgrimage leads me from the open plains into an intricate structure known as the Hunter's March, a biome that resembles a colossal anthill. Here, the scattered hunting grounds of the Scar clan are replaced by their civilization itself with a maze of tunnels and passages that require risky jumps and strategic arena battles to navigate, moving further through the maze-like passages. One intriguing room contains a monument of a majestic large ant. The statue seems to depict a being that is almost like a dancer. It's a strange sight when you consider the brutal and feral nature of the creatures outside. Perhaps this deity is the true leader of the Scar clan. In a room directly below the statue, the Chapel of the Beast is a sacred arena where the ant colony holds a peculiar collection of captive creatures. The cavern itself is lined with cages to hold different flying lifeforms captive. At its heart, a colossal savage beastfly breaks free from its own prison, shattering the other cages and unleashing the trapped critters into the fray. The furious beastfly transforms the fight into a chaotic dance of survival, forcing Hornet to not only take care of the enraged creature, but also to constantly adapt to the swarmed battlefield. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty beat up after taking on the fight, so I was happy to finally find this bench to rest on. I hate this place. Rising on the warm air vents, Hornet is carried out of the passages of the Hunter's March and into open space once more. The suffocating tunnels give way to a silence so heavy it feels almost unnatural. This is Greymoor, a vast, desolate landscape of quiet sorrow. Here the ground is a mix of muted grays and somber tones. The beings that call this place home are trapped in an unending cycle. Known as the Tenders, these are bugs charged to catch dregs of silk that fall from the Citadel above. It looks like grim, tireless labor which they carry out without any rest. Assisting them are the Cutters, scissor-wielding bugs who cut and spool the fallen silk. I can't help but wonder if it was the haunting that drove them to this madness, or if their unending toil was the cause before that. It's an unsettling thought that their grim work, rather than an outside force, may have been the source of this mental decay In the upper reaches of the biome, clusters of silk balloons drift skyward, lifting whole structures with them. I could immediately recognize the design as the work of the seamstress. She helped to build an engineered cityscape marked by bells and clever mechanisms, like a contraption that unfolds into a stepladder of balloons. It paints Greymoor as a society with a refined grasp of engineering and a devotion to efficiency woven directly into its architecture. But the skies are also home to a group of ruthless predators that prey on those caught in this endless cycle. High on the roofs, craws are screeching scavengers that rarely attack alone, ambushing passing pilgrims and tenders alike. These guys really annoyed me. Just something about aggressive flying creatures always being the most frustrating types. So I decided to collect some rag pelts and construct this beautiful scarecrow, which actually only made matters worse. The Craws sent me summons to meet them in court to answer for my crime. Inside the court of Craws, I found all the Craws had new spikes on their head. This is usually a way to keep birds from roosting on property, but here they did it so Hornet can't hurt them with a pogo. Although it was an effective method that almost made the fight impossible for me to win, Hornet is ultimately above the law. But something even more terrifying was waiting for me at the edge of Greymoor. The Moorwing is a winged might beast that was bred for the sole purpose of catching workers who tried to flee their tasks. But with its wranglers long dead, this mighty creature now stalks the towers of Greymoor, feasting on passing pilgrims and workers without distinction. It's said that Greymoor was not always this way. According to a traveler, this desolate moor was once a thriving farming district before the Citadel shifted its focus entirely to silk production. The landscape is filled with the remains of this past, including 2 massive towers that were used for the storage of silk. The deeper truth of Pharloom is that it's not just a collection of biomes, but a kingdom with a functional, now haunted society. Like the Deep Docks with its industrial labor, Greymoor was a working district and a vital part of a production chain. From hot, dirty work to soul-crushing collection of silk, the lower levels of Pharloom appear to be a vast, interconnected machine. A machine that has now broken down, leaving its haunted workers behind in an endless cycle of labor and rot. At the far western edge of Greymoor stands a wall with homes that are shaped like a bell, appropriately named. Bellhart is a town built entirely out of bells. But almost immediately, the majestic sight is corrupted by a horrifying scene. In this place, the haunting has taken a more disturbing form, with the residents strung up on strands of silk, unable to move and groaning in pain. Even the area above and below Bellhart is made entirely out of bells, like it's a huge mountain of the ringing objects. The area is home of the Firm, small burrowers with soft bodies that seek out hard bells to wear for protection. And as I dug through the bells, I found their larger kind, the Winged Firm. They are the same creatures who have grown too large to burrow, now bearing a heavy bell as a shell. This bell vein is one of Pharloom's most vital regions, with tunnels and chambers carved entirely from bells that form the kingdom's great highway. The bellways extend outward from here, linking nearly every biome through a network of bells. In one of the many bellways, I discovered a massive creature ensnared in silk. Like the residents of Bellhart, its body was bound so tightly it could no longer move. I managed to free it, but it came at a cost. The armored isopod-looking bug erupted in fury, leaping across the chamber and sending bells crashing from the ceiling. At the end of the battle, however, the creature showed up again and lent me its aid, either as a thank you for their rescue or respect between equals. Whatever the reason, the bellways would have remained inaccessible without this ally. Unfortunately, the rumbling from inside the bellways has awakened a more dangerous life form known as the Bell Eater, a long dormant centipede and the natural predator of the Bell Beast. With no other choice, I had to venture inside the bellways to eliminate the creature and ensure my travels wouldn't become a death trap. Pretty much immediately, the huge monster traps Hornet in the bell vein and starts the fight. The Bell Eater has some interesting attacks and some pretty gross attacks, but after a brutal fight with this oddity, it wasn't Hornet who delivered the final strike. So with the Bell Eater and the crazed fanatic responsible for the haunting of Bellhart defeated, the pilgrimage turns westwards into a world of primal nature. Shellwood is a verdant swamp dominated by a canopy of colossal roots that hang from the ceiling. The area is thick with vegetation and crawling with insects, each species moving with little regard for the others, as if the trees hold 100 tiny worlds stacked side by side. The being at the center of these woods is considered the ancient heart of Shellwood, connected to all its living things and granting safe passage for any bugs who walk across their branches. Like many forests and swamps of our own world, Shellwood is an ecosystem ruled by the creatures that inhabit it. Predators stalk prey, only to become prey themselves in turn, a cycle as old as life itself. But with its guiding deity long dead, the haunting corrupts this balance even further. The vegetation has grown hostile, and certain tribes now dominate the woods, turning the ecosystem into a place of violence where any passing pilgrim is marked for death. It's here in the lower levels of Shellwood that you'll find those who have adapted to its waterlogged terrain, like the elegant pond skippers who glide gracefully across the surface. It's a small moment of peace before we encounter the haunted pond catchers that throw long pins at their prey. In the higher reaches of the biome, the flora strongly resemble the fallen forest deity. Delicate blossoms like the fascia drift through the air, ready to release a choking cloud of pollen at the slightest disturbance, while the mask-like Galea watches from the branches, ready to attack. But this environment is also a source of vital resources, showcasing a perfect example of a mutualistic symbiosis. The purple blossoms contain a polyp heart, which secretes a sticky sap that provides sustenance to the native wood wasps. In a clear case of co-evolution, these wasps, in turn, fiercely guard the heart, creating a symbiotic and territorial relationship essential to the region's balance. The destruction of one of these nests could be dangerous for Shellwood's order, as removing a creature from the ecosystem could unravel the entire forest. Now climbing higher through the flowers and branches, I found that the upper reaches of Shellwood are the domain of the splinters, a species that uses the vines and roots to create an ecological zone where survival depends on disguise. The splinters have adapted to this perfectly, with bodies that can mimic a branch so precisely that prey never realizes the danger until it's too late. At the top of this hierarchy nests an imposing old insect called Sister Splinter. As the apex predator, she built her domain among the canopy, and within her territory, no pilgrim who enters is meant to leave alive. I had to put a stop to this life form because the sole enabler of its dominance was the death of the forest deity. So when I returned to this place after some time had passed, I was relieved to see some of the balance return to Shellwood. At the far edge of Shellwood lies a strange network of interconnected tunnels. The first time I set foot into the Wormways, they reminded me of a claustrophobic and dangerous area I explored in the first Hollow Knight game, though Deep Nest was pretty tame compared to an area we're exploring later. These narrow tunnels were naturally formed by the burrowing of large creatures. The worm-like bugs like the groms and gromlings establish a clear ecosystem where they are the top of the food chain, or at least the most significant part of the environment. The groms attacking from the ceiling, for instance, look like a predatory adaptation to the verticality of the tunnels. The passages also seem to connect closely with sections of the Moss Grotto, where strands of greenery creep into the stone passages. Even some of the grotto's creatures, like the Agnids, have found their way into these depths. And what is that sound? Oh. There you go, buddy. I noticed that some passages of the Wormways are overtaken by a strange plant that bathes the tunnel in an eerie blue glow. Its vibrancy feels unnatural. What effect it has on the creatures of this place is uncertain, but its presence alone suggests that change is already underway. Deeper within, an alchemist has claimed one of the tunnels as his workshop, devoting his studies to this glowing substance. He tells me, my assistant and I have been injecting plasmium into the local flora and fauna since our arrival. No ill effects have been observed, and so we can conclude that the process is utterly, completely safe. His assistant, however, is nowhere to be found, lost somewhere in the maze below. It was at this moment that I realized I completely forgot to pet Aira. Wait, you can't pet the dog in this game? Instead of leaving a negative review on Steam, I returned to the Wormways. Almost immediately upon entering, I was met with the alchemist assistant, granted false life by the plasmium. He wasn't the last. As I ventured further into the passages, I discovered that the strange glowing plant had blossomed into an infestation. It had spread to every corner, bathing the entire network in a sickly, ethereal blue light. The groms and gromlings that once dominated the ecosystems were no different, their bodies glowing with the same blue radiance. They attacked me with an unsettling new energy while moving faster and more aggressive. Some of the creatures have even fused to the roof of the cave, no longer able to move freely. The life forms of this cave have become living vessels for the substance, including the alchemist still in his workshop, with the substance sprouting from within his shell. No doubt that eventually it will consume him entirely. In the forgotten kingdom of Hallownest, this blue material was known as lifeblood. It was a taboo substance, forbidden by the Pale King, and while I didn't understand the reasons back then, I do now. I finally left the caves that had been seeded with that cursed substance for a hidden camp known as the Wisp Thicket. The inhabitants of this dense forest share a common obsession, fanatically devoting themselves to the flame. This forest is home to creatures who have become followers of this strange, illuminating light, worshipping and wielding its power. The cult-like devotion is best seen in the many-legged burning bugs. They have somehow learned to call and guide the scorching wisps that share their thicket, a short-lived sprite born of flickering flame. As I wandered deeper, I stumbled across a bench hidden inside a massive bag suspended from the ceiling. I found that these bags usually hold ash, no doubt tied to some ritual purpose connected to the flame, and in the distance through the thicket, the fanatics had raised tents from the same cloth that draped their bodies, their homes, their garments, their entire existence woven into the same act of devotion. The thicket's ultimate manifestation of this devotion is a totem and god worshipped by the burning bugs called Father of the Flame, a structure that looks like a final act of ritual with an aged bug at the pyre's heart. But with the Father of the Flame ultimately destroyed, the burning bugs immolate themselves, combusting into 3 wisps and permanently disappearing. It's intriguing how the Burning Ones are but a small faction within this vast world, their faith bound to a different deity that is born from sacrifice. Perhaps it shows that each region may hold its own god of worship, and it left me wondering what other hidden societies can be found in Pharloom, because this kingdom is one of extreme contrasts. As I returned to the top of Greymoor's towers on my way to the next biome, it really hit me. How could everything here be so drained of color after the burning altars of the thicket? Perhaps each biome in Pharloom is not just distinct, but deliberately shaped by the haunting in ways that transform both landscape and life into entirely different expressions of the same curse. And I think the most disturbing example lies in a small hidden entrance high in Greymoor's upper levels. A zone so hidden, it feels as though the beings in the Citadel above wanted the world to forget it ever existed. Sinner's Road is Pharloom's sewer, a filthy example of what it takes to sustain the beauty and refinement of the Citadel. The air is sickly and a pervasive contaminated fluid flows through its passages. Muck, maggot-infested water. Stepping into this poisoned sludge contaminates all life reserves like a disease. The pollution of the upper world literally consumes the life force of those forced to dwell in these depths. The central purpose of the area is focused on its most abundant and horrific creatures, the muck roaches. They are described as starved pack bugs with an insatiable appetite with a tough hide and pungent meat. These roaches breed so rapidly, they are being farmed for food. Sinner's Road, as it turns out, is an industrial meat farm built out of rusty hooks, spike wheels, and discarded cages designed to hold both livestock and prisoners. To manage this aggressive food source, a small society of haunted workers has been established. The roach catcher is a nimble worker whose skill lies in keeping the beasts corralled and caged using barbed bolas. The throwing weapon is perfect for the wide caverns they inhabit, displaying a keen claw for crafting. The roach feeder is a tall roach tender whose only job is to deliver a lean diet of maggot gruel, and they are equipped with a curled pin designed to keep roaches at bay and the tender from turning into the meal. Lastly, the roach keeper is a grizzled old roach tender bound with a heavy chain lasso. Even if their mind is largely lost to the haunting, it eternally binds them to this cruel task they had in life. These keepers are all forced into a cycle of necessary labor, with their entire lives revolving around managing the creatures that symbolize the kingdom's moral decay. And worst of all, the moment I thought I was able to catch a break, the bench mechanism malfunctioned and I had to swim through the maggot-infested water to fix it. I want to get out of here, but there's one final step in the food chain of Sinner's Road: the preparation of the meat. Upon stepping inside an establishment, the first thing I noticed were roach servers cutting slabs of muckroach meat. I had a hard time calling them chefs because what they were doing was just a crude mangling of meat. But before the haunting, it probably wasn't much different. After I hit the gong in the middle of the room, it started to make sense. Once celebrated throughout Pharloom for their culinary brilliance, this graced Chef Legoli now lives in the Citadel sewers, surrounded by vermin in the depths of Sinner's Road after a list of culinary crimes. When I explored Sinner's Road, I was under the impression the menu here consisted of different flavors of muckroach, but the truth I found was so much worse. After defeating Legoli, I returned to the same establishment to find the roach servers carving up Legoli's own body, serving their master as the next course. And above the kitchen, I entered a hidden room where the dishes weren't prepared from roaches alone. Corpses of bugs were floating in oversized jars, their bodies preserved like grotesque delicacies. The meals Legoli prepared here were flavored with the essence drawn from Pharloom's own pilgrims and wildlife. The sewer eventually drains into an ecosystem that's somehow even more rotten than Sinner's Road, where all of Pharloom's excess and waste collects to poison the kingdom even further. The first hint that this place is something worse is the bizarre evolution of the muckroach, where Sinner's Road simply contained and bred the creatures. Some of them have escaped to this place, Bilewater, where the toxic waste and exhaust smog from the Citadel has transformed them. The bloat roach is an obese offshoot of the muckroaches that's able to float in the air from the noxious gases in its stomach. It only ever moves from its position slightly and attacks by vomiting sizzling bile towards anything that moves. This creature is our entry point to this abomination of a biome, a murky vertical lowland that serves as Pharloom's toxic sump. Sinner's Road was a vile industry, but this is a state of complete environmental collapse where the natural world has been entirely corrupted by the runoff from every Citadel-based biome above. Navigating Bilewater is an unforgiving nightmare. The muck maggots covering the floor, dangerous jumps between small platforms that require caustic bubbles that explode on impact, constantly fighting enemies that explode with bile on death. Basically, the ecosystem is fundamentally built upon the toxic flow, a place where life struggles to survive, so the only life forms that live on are the ones that are monstrously adapted to the caustic elements, oddities that use bile as a weapon and pollution as a life source. Smaller pests like the swamp squid and myrmite have sizzling bile sacs, and they are most dangerous in the moment of their explosive and corrosive death when the built-up poison is finally able to escape. The toxicity has even led to grotesque new forms of food, with the slubberlug, a younger form of muckroach, having been deliberately bred in watery pens with a scent that suggests they must taste vile. They attack prey by leaping from the water and snapping with their flexible jaws, dragging their food down below. Perhaps the industrialized food chain of Sinner's Road extends to Bilewater, treating this sump as an aquaculture farm for sustenance. After a horrifying climb to the higher levels of the area, I found a bench, and I'm sure this time everything is okay and I can just... So this might be the worst area I've ever tried to map out. But after what felt like an hour of exploring, I found this hidden bench right here that actually works and without any traps. Though it's difficult feeling at ease in this room because of the body bags dangling above me. And it's strange because this clearly couldn't have been the work of the vermin. You see, they don't have thumbs to tie knots. Some corpses even hang exposed from the ceiling, their gold and white Citadel attire making it clear they were seen as intruders. Ever since arriving, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched, with my suspicions finally being confirmed when the Stilkin pounced from the infested waters. This tribe once fought against the influence of the Citadel and lost the conflict, turning the once lush and vibrant land into the poisonous Bilewater. Once we find the entrance to the Citadel, we'll be able to explore the biome that dumped all this sewage water onto their territory. But for now, there is a hidden area called the Pale Lake, where the corruption hasn't spread yet. This lake is the last vestige of this region's original clean environment and represents what Bilewater may have looked like before the Citadel's expansion and pollution. The chief of the Stilkin, Groll the Great, is forever raging against the world above that chokes their caves and sees them suffer. So perhaps more than the kingdom's sewage outlet, this is a place of political and spiritual resistance. Most of the lower level areas house workers who are haunted and trapped in their labor, but the Stilkin are conscious victims of the poison that seeps down from the upper levels. They have a clear, unhaunted understanding that the Citadel is the direct cause of their suffering. And there's only one biome that remains before the promised land and the end of the pilgrimage can be reached. The final ascent begins in a huge cave through which a road to the Citadel has been built, but strong winds and sands continually erode what construction remains. The blasted steps represent the ultimate point of no return, with a path that feels designed to destroy pilgrims. The constructed path is a crumbling monument to a fading power, in the sense that the grand vision of the Citadel is being undone by the relentless forces of nature, leaving behind a desolate landscape that few can traverse. The wildlife here is made up largely of sand carvers, shell-plated worms that exploit the terrain's instability. Lurking beneath shifting sand pools, they lie in ambush and erupt at the faintest tremor to swallow anything careless enough to step wrong. But even stranger, the rocks are veined with red coral where the Drisnid make their homes. They have fused their faces to sharpened coral masks and use it to ricochet their mask around tight corners. Once I barely escaped the ecosystem that was determined to bury me, I found a surprisingly friendly pilgrim alone in a cave, playing with what looked like a strange set of dice. We're so close. Our pilgrimage is almost over. Just one final, brutal climb, The bug, who introduced himself as Lumble the Lucky, invited me to test my luck with a game of dice. After losing every single roll, I decided to just return to my pilgrimage. But the red coral I'd seen earlier was aggressively overtaking the biome, with crimson growths appearing on structures, until I entered a cave where two great conch flies appeared. It's said that once partnered with a mate, they will rarely be seen alone, and the battle reflected this truth as a deadly dance where I was targeted by two independently acting forces that used the environment as launching pads for their coral horns. I managed to bring down one conch fly, while the other slipped away into the distance, no doubt waiting for the chance to avenge its fallen mate. Beyond the arena, I found something I wasn't expecting, a barren wasteland that marked the edge of Pharloom's kingdom. Yet, it wasn't completely empty. While the ground was too dangerous to cross due to the sand carvers, a hot air balloon, resembling the seamstress's work, hovered in the sandstorm. Inside, I found the seamstress' sister, the Pinstress. She kindly invited me to train with her, and I gained a powerful needle strike ability to help me with the final push toward the Citadel. Perhaps the sisters are more than they seem, once renowned warriors that served the Citadel until its haunting downfall. The only thing that stood in my way was the chilling authority of the judges of the blasted steppes. Each judge, armed with a symbol and mallet, is tasked with eliminating any pilgrim deemed impure. The countless husks strewn beside the path stand as a disturbing record of their final decisions. It really made me wonder where these judges even came from, until I dropped down here and I found these little guys. But even that wasn't enough to stop me. I made it all the way to the massive door that would open the gates to the Citadel, but the last judge stood directly in my path. This was no ordinary guardian, but a long-lived being tasked with the single charge of deciding who was worthy to enter the Citadel. Its armor was worn by time, and its will was unbreakable. It had likely stood through countless generations, never defeated, never wavering in its fatal judgment. My journey stops here for now. In the next video, I'll map out the remaining biomes, focusing on the Holy Citadel itself. We'll investigate the true nature of the world above, uncover the faith of the bugs deemed worthy, and explore the final, corrupted environments directly connected to the Citadel's downfall. So, as always, thank you for watching. I have a lot of Silksong videos on the channel, with even more content releasing every couple of days. So make sure to check those out if you want more silly Silksong content. Don't forget to like, comment, and hit the bell notification icon, and I'll see you in the next video.